We're here in Florida, and the state is essentially wide open.
Yeah.
Some of the states are still closed with coronavirus lockdowns. If you could give advice to those governors, what would it be?
Wake up and open up. I mean, this is not only about the economy. This is hurting our children, our kids. Even the new CDC director under Joe Biden, amazingly, before the unions got to the Biden administration, had a moment of clarity and honesty where she said it is completely safe for students and staff to go back to school. And so in this case, I love turning the tables. Follow the science. The science shows it's safe for kids to go back. It shows that with reasonable protocols, it's safe for businesses to open up. And I think states like Florida, Texas, the Dakotas, elsewhere, states that have conservative, freedom-loving governors have shown not only you can be open, but you can do so in a way that actually produces good results when it comes to health as well.
Shifting gears on an unrelated topic, recently in January, we saw a major event happen at the U.S. Capitol where protesters totally took over the Capitol, and now a lot of them are being held accountable, being targeted and arrested. And you actually had a similar experience back in 2011 when you were governor, where people took over the Capitol while you were fighting the unions. Were they held accountable in the same way that the ones that stormed the U.S. Capitol are being held accountable?
Yeah, what happened in 2011 is in so many ways so parallel, except for the fact that there was not only no accountability, that you saw almost universally people across the political spectrum denounce the violence. Now, there's been questions as to what and exactly how things happened on the 6th of January, but clearly for the violence, the people breaking in, horrible things that were done, without a doubt, people from one end of the spectrum denounced it. In my case, in Wisconsin, it wasn't hours, it wasn't even a day or two, it was weeks on end. At one point, as many as 100,000 people occupied the state capitol and the surrounding square. And not only did you see Democrats not denouncing it, you saw people even nationally, like Nancy Pelosi, actually encouraging it, really pushing back. Now, when I made that point early on, some in the left and some in some media outlets, which sometimes are indistinguishable between the left and some of those outlets, said, oh no, there's no comparison, nobody was killed, this is much worse than in the U.S. Capitol. And I said, no, it is so much more like what happened, in the sense that of those 100,000 or so, clearly, without a doubt, I would acknowledge that most were peaceful. Just like I think it's pretty reasonable to say that most of the people who showed up in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the president on January 6th in the Ellipse, by the Washington Monument, by really on the mall itself, were overwhelmingly peaceful. In both cases, a smaller percentage went out and did things that were wrong, but in Wisconsin, they broke through windows, they took down doors, they crawled over the Capitol Police. It's only by the grace of God, thankfully, that someone didn't die in those instances because of how radicalized some of the people were. The difference was the left did not denounce what happened in Wisconsin, while just about everybody did with what happened with the violence in our U.S. Capitol.
That was when you were governor, so now you are actually in charge of Young America Foundation, and we see Democrats have complete control in Washington, Senate, House, and presidency. What would be your advice to young people as they navigate the conservative movement and try to advance the movement while Democrats are in control in Washington?
Well, it gives us a tremendous opportunity to get back to the basics, to get back to the fundamentals. Although I might add, on a bit of optimism, the Supreme Court is solidly conservative now, which is a great deal. And without the filibuster changing, it's not likely to change anytime soon. And the states are overwhelmingly, in the legislative bodies, dominated by conservative majorities. So I think that's great. But back to the Biden administration and to the House and the Senate, I say for a lot of conservative students on campuses, it's a great time to not be caught up in one or two personalities, but get back to the fundamentals. Talk about the real difference isn't between the left and the right, Republican or Democrat. It's more fundamental than that. The difference we see in our society is between those who put their trust in the government and those of us who put our trust in the people. It's really the difference between socialism and freedom. Tell those stories, invite people to come into your campuses who've come from other countries, particularly communist or even current socialist countries. Tell the stories of how that's failed. Contrast that with how people come from all over the world to this shining city on the hill that is America. Why? Because of our freedom and our opportunity. That's what we should stand for.
And then also at Young America Foundation, you just had a new addition in former Vice President Mike Pence as a Ronald Reagan Scholar.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what he's going to bring to your organization?
He's doing a number of things. So Mike Pence has been involved in the conservative movement and aligned with some of the work of Young America's Foundation and other conservative groups for really decades. He went out to the Reagan Ranch back about 15 years ago with his family. He spoke for years at our conferences, just like Ronald Reagan did. He's going to be doing a podcast on a frequent basis. In many ways, like YAF sponsored Ronald Reagan's radio address between the time he was governor and president of the United States. He's going to be doing a weekly column. A monthly column. He just did his first inaugural one was on Rush Limbaugh. A lot of people don't realize that Mike Pence was a radio guy before he went into elected office, and so he talked about how Rush helped him and brought him into the radio world. And he's going to be going on college campuses. And we don't know not only for Vice President Pence, but for any number of other folks that we have on campus on our behalf pushing the conservative agenda. It is so critically important to go into our campuses, into the Lion's Den, and make the case to our students, draw that attention, and get the facts on our side. Because when we do, we know the facts are overwhelming. It's exactly why they're trying to cancel us. I saw it in my own case with the recall. They're trying to cancel us because they can't win the battle of ideas. When we get our ideas out to young people, we win. And that's why we hope that Mike Pence will be just yet another great addition to our all-star lineup of conservative speakers.
Vice President Mike Pence is definitely one of the big leaders and big players in the Republican Party. Looking ahead to 2024, he's certainly a contender there. What do you think the Republican Party needs in a leader for 2024?
A lot will depend on what the president wants to do. If President Trump gets in the race, I think, as many others have said, it's his to lose if he wants to be the nominee and make the case to the American people. Who knows? He spent a lifetime in the private sector. After a couple of years out, he might not want to be. But assuming he doesn't, I think you've got a wide open field. Mike Pence, Nikki Haley are two of the more traditional front runners. But I think beyond just the folks in Washington, there's a lot of great senators. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in governors, particularly whether it's Ron DeSantis here in Florida, Kristi Noem in South Dakota, Greg Abbott in Texas, governors who during this absolute time of crisis have shown they could take care of their citizens, take care of their health, and yet keep their economy open and vibrant. I think will be classic leaders that not only Republicans and conservatives, but the American people will be looking for.
And then one other little question. You mentioned
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh. Were you a Rush Limbaugh fan?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think back early in 1990, at my church, there was a guy who drove a semi-truck, and every Sunday he'd talk to me about politics. Every Sunday this guy would talk to me about politics, and he was all into the details. He knew all this good stuff about conservatives and politics and thought, and I probably mistakenly shouldn't have judged a book by color, but I thought, how does this guy driving a truck know all this? Well, he told me. It was because he listened to Rush Limbaugh. And so not long after that, I started listening to Rush. Not only was it eye-opening because I enjoyed listening to him, but what I really liked over the really years and years of listening was getting the information, finding out the articles he was referencing, the books he would mention, the speakers and leaders he would talk about. Those were people I gravitated to. Those were stories and readings that I stuck in my head and thought about. He really, along with Ronald Reagan, helped shape my view of conservative thought.
So you just gave a panel on free speech, and we're seeing a lot of cancel culture associated with our political leaders right now. Do you have any advice for them as they're facing all of these calls for resignations and firings and blacklistings and whatnot?
I'd say without a doubt, be strong. Equally, if not more importantly, and this is something I picked up from Ronald Reagan, keep bringing it back to the people. If you think about the people who elected you to do the job you're doing, whether you're a lawmaker, whether you're a governor, whoever you might be, keep bringing it back to the American people, the people of your state, the people of your jurisdiction, because what I found in the darkest of days when I was getting all sorts of attacks from the media, when protesters were showing up, I'd go out and I'd go to factories and farms and small businesses and schools and other places, and I would find people that pull me aside and say, "Hey, Governor, me and my family pray for you every single day." And it was just great to remember I was fighting for them. I wasn't fighting for the politicians in my capital. I wasn't fighting for media attention. I wasn't fighting for some national headline. I was fighting to make their lives better. if you don't forget about them, if you bring it back to the people, the reason you got elected in the first place was to defend those rights for those people in your given area, you'll never get a weak knee. You'll always have the courage to do what's right.